Well, we're here because there is a Game 7 in the National League Championship Series. It's payoff pitch Tuesday, October 24th, 2024. Brendan Glasheen, your host, joined by our normal Tuesday crew, Sean Zerillo and Anthony Tabundo. Yes, we are previewing Game 7, Phillies and Diamondbacks. We will be here, not here tomorrow. So let's get that housekeeping straightened out. We will not be here tomorrow. We're going to take the day off, come back on Thursday for a full World Series breakdown. The winner of tonight's game takes on the Texas Rangers. They blasted the Astros last night in Game 7 in Houston. And then Friday's episode will be a succinct breakdown of Game 1 specifically. So series thoughts, how we want to look at betting the series as a whole, and just a breakdown of pitching staffs, lineups, bullpens, all that good stuff. Thursday, Friday, Game 1 centric. We'll get starting pitching matchups, of course, and we'll find out how we're going to bet Game 1 of the World Series on Friday. But there is business to take care of for tonight. If you haven't done so already, please leave a 5-star rating and review, because we are looking at those throughout the course of the week, and we'll give out another free Action Network Pro 1-year account beginning of next week. So if you haven't done that already, please do. You have a chance to get a chance at that. We are presented by BetMGM, so any odds we reference, we'll have BetMGM alongside. Here we go. Tabundo, Ranger Suarez, Brandon Pfaadt is your pitching matchup tonight at Citizens Bank Park. You were at the ballpark last night. Totals at 8.5. I saw a bunch of folks from Action bet the under, and the Phillies are minus 165 on the money line. Where are you heading for this game tonight?
Yeah, so I did bet the under 8.5. I think it is all too high given the pitching situation and given how I expect this to be managed. Now, the same could have been said last night with the Texas Houston under, but I think both of those offenses are operating at a much higher level right now than these offenses in this game. And I think both bullpens here are in a better position for this game. Kevin Ginkel and Paul Sewald have pitched 13 playoff innings. They have not allowed a run. So the Diamondbacks' 8th and 9th inning guys who will pitch in this game at any cost, just about, for run prevention purposes, are very, very good. And the Phillies, based on who they threw last night, we can kind of get a blueprint of who is not going to pitch tonight. And that means that Orion Kerkering is unlikely to pitch, Michael Lorenzen, Craig Kimbrell, and Gregory Soto. So I do expect the Phillies to roll with their 4 best relievers and potentially Zach Wheeler in a comeback spot here. We saw Jordan Montgomery come in last night in a big spot to get some outs. I think Wheeler's very available for the Phillies in the bullpen, and Rob Thompson said as much in that game. So in the post game. So the Phillies, with Strahm, Dominguez, the beauty of this series is that as you get later, you figure out who your guys are right now. And it's Alvarado, it's Strahm, it's Dominguez for the Phillies, and Jeff Hoffman. So they know who their 4 best guys are behind Ranger Suarez. Ranger Suarez, minimum 5 starts, has the lowest postseason ERA in history. And it's kind of wild when you look at Suarez's profile. He doesn't look like somebody who would dominate hitters. 22% strikeout rate this year, 8% walk rate. But they had no answer for his changeup in the last meeting. And the Phillies had no answer for Brandon Pfaadt, who has the stuff. Sean and I were just talking off air, and Sean said that he's the highest ceiling on this staff. And I think it's a fair point. Pfaadt completely shut down the Phillies in Game 3. The Phillies right now, their approaches at the plate, they're a little over aggressive. And sometimes, it's fun because they hit home runs and we get excited when they swing at the first pitch. But there are downsides to their approach. And right now, the Diamondbacks have a clear plan, and that is to pitch around Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper and to go after Trey Turner, Alec Boehm, and Nick Castellanos. And they've had a ton of success in the majority of this series since it shifted to Arizona in Game 3 in taking those guys out and forcing anybody but Schwarber and Harper to beat them, because Schwarber and Harper have been hitting home runs all series. The rest of the lineup has not been producing. Castellanos, Boehm, and Turner especially. So I think there's some real concerns for the Phillies. Their plate approach is getting, overpressed here and swinging too much. That was a problem in Game 1. It was a problem in Game 3. It wasn't a problem in Game 1. It worked for them in Game 1. It's been a problem in Game 3, problem in Game 6. So I do think under 8.5 is too high here. Half run too high. Pretty chilly tonight in Philly as well for the weather. So under 8.5 to start, and then we can dive into some props. And I've got some fun props. So let's ride.
So Zerillo, when we previewed Game 3 and we were on Brandon Pfaadt, that was actually a game in which you guys said if there was a side to take that day, it would probably be Arizona. And Brandon Pfaadt, you've been high on him really this series. He's been their best pitcher. How are you handicapping this one tonight?
Yeah, I circled game 3 before the series to bet the Diamondbacks, and we got plus money, and they closed plus 105 in that game. Phillies minus 125 on the road. So flipping home field, right, for these two teams, same pitching matchup, but flipping home field, you would expect to bet the Phillies at minus 170 or get the Phillies at minus 170. You expect the Diamondbacks around plus 145, and that is roughly where the market is. So it does seem like mostly the game 3 projection and the game 7 projections do align, or that the game 3 and game 7 betting odds do align relative to flipping one home park to another. And I don't think, unlike game 3, right, where we knew nothing about Max Scherzer and we had a little bit more information on him heading into game 7, game 3 of this series, we kind of thought that the Phillies might be aggressive, or we thought the Phillies might have a longer leash with Ranger Suarez and let him go a little bit longer. And that's exactly what happened. Tonight, I think you anticipate that they shorten him up again a little bit and don't let him pitch through trouble. So factoring in more of the bullpens for these two teams does increase my chances for Philadelphia relative to that last game by about 1%, 1.5%, if they're going to use their bullpen just a touch more aggressively. But that said, I showed value on Arizona in game 3, and I show value on Arizona here. I like Arizona at plus 140 or better. I'm just, again, not in a position to bet it. Same position I was in yesterday with the Diamondbacks or the Phillies minus 1.5 series ticket. I have Phillies pennant features, and I could hedge out of that. But basically, hedging is going to take away enough of a percentage of my profit that I don't necessarily want to do that. It's a quarter unit bet at 7-1, which is going to return 2 units. So we're 2.25 units, including the initial risk. So really do not want to hedge out of that. But if you do not have a side coming into the game, if you do not have any bets coming into the game, just like game 6, I think the Diamondbacks are a value side. Just in game 6, it was very obvious they were a value side because of the pricing discrepancy relative to game 2. We talked about yesterday. They closed plus 140 in game 2. You were getting plus 160 yesterday. Now you're basically getting the same price you should have gotten in game 2, or game 3, assuming this game would have been in Philadelphia. And there's really no adjustment. And I do lean slightly more to Philadelphia today, but I still show value on Arizona. So that is my story in terms of the side for game 7. Is just a little bit more bullpens, going to help the Phillies by about 1%, but the little bit of bullpens too, also going to help the under, as Anthony talked about. On top of the weather, this game would have taken place at 5 o'clock yesterday. Today, it's taking place at 8 o'clock. So temperatures into the 50s instead of being in the low 60s, just a little bit cooler. But all of that points to the under. And I made this total about 7.75. So under 8.5 to minus 120, under 8 at even money, both fine for me for bets. We'll talk about props in a second, but Diamondbacks and the under, the value sides for game 7, the under, the one I'm betting, obviously for reasons I mentioned regarding my futures. But yeah, absolutely think there's value on Fott and the Diamondbacks today. And I think as soon as next year, Fott is going to be their best pitcher. He has the best stuff. 41% called strike plus whiff rate in that start against the Phillies. He was absolutely elite. And he definitely put some fear in me tonight, considering how live his arm is. I mean, yes, the lowest floor given his command amongst Kelly and Gallen, but definitely the highest ceiling too, because he is the best stuff of the 3. So depends on how good that command is on a night-to-night basis, but Fott seems to be locked in right now.
If you want to go into the narratives, like the rookie on the road in game 7, that will be interesting. I mean, the first inning is very important because if he gives up a couple of walks and pitches around Schwarber and Harper, the Alec Bohm and Bryson Stott at bats become extremely important, keeping the crowd in it. Can either of them get a hit in this series? That moment, it feels like a big one. And I feel like
if he's in the same,
it's going to come very early in the first inning
last night. It feels like a much different moment with a rookie on the mound than a guy who started for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. So
exactly.
Yeah, different pressure.
Debundo, when you look at, you mentioned that the possibility of Wheeler being available, 99 pitches in game 5, in Arizona. He'd pitch on, he'd pitch on 2 days rest, right? Because he pitched on Friday or Saturday.
It's throwing day.
It's throwing day, exactly. So the Phillies did this and have done this in the past, right? So Ranger Suarez started game 3 of the NLCS last year and then pitched an inning, two-thirds of an inning. He got them on 2 pitches, but pitched 2/3 of an inning to close game 5 of the NLCS last year. They then used Suarez in game 1 for an inning of the World Series, and then he started game 3 2 days later. So they're willing to use guys on their throwing day. I'm not expecting Wheeler to go Madison Bumgarner here, but I think it's a very real possibility that if they need an inning late, that he's going to come throw it, maybe even two. So I think that's on the cards, and Wheeler's been the best pitcher in the playoffs. So that certainly would make Phillies fans feel better. But it is different coming out of the bullpen versus starting a game for somebody who's so used to routine and has talked in the past about how important throwing every 5 days is for them as a starter. So there is some risk to that, but certainly if it's the ninth inning and Wheeler's coming in, I will feel personally pretty confident about the Phillies if they have a lead.
D-backs used 8 pitchers a bullpen day in game number 4, and they tied the series with the 6-5 win. I'm curious, just before we get to props, what would be the bridge for the Diamondbacks from Pfaadt? Would they go to a starter? Like we saw Montgomery last night for the Rangers, but what's the faith for Lovello in the middle innings to bridge to the back end of their bullpen? Or could they go exactly what they did in game 4 and use a bunch of those guys that pitched in that game because they all pitched okay?
So yeah, I mean, at this point they have multiple guys who have pitched 3 out of the past 4 days, and that's always something to look at. A lot of times people see the pitching back-to-back days, right? That's the normal, or pitching 3 consecutive days. You're not going to get a guy on the 4th day, but 3 out of 4 days does become a little troublesome. But they've managed their bullpen really well. Like Ginkel's gone 3 out of 5 days, Sewald 3 out of 5 days, Thompson 3 out of 5 days. So there's really nobody in the Diamondbacks bullpen that they should have issue pushing today. They can basically just run back the same reliever usage that they had in game 6. So yeah, I think the Diamondbacks actually, with the way game 6 played out, it might have been slightly more to their benefit. Granted, the Phillies don't really have anybody who would be on 3 and 5 days either. So they kind of have their choice, but making the bullpens equally rested for game 7 was not something I expected. I thought Arizona would have to go more aggressively into their bullpen in games 3 through 5 at home and really have that thing worn out by the time they were headed back to Philly. So the fact that you're incorporating more bullpens, right, and increased my projection for the Phillies, but also by this point in the series, I didn't think the Diamondbacks would be at a similar rest advantage that the Phillies have. So that kind of neutralizes things as well. So maybe I projected a bigger bullpen edge for the Phillies in game 7 than we are actually getting.
Yeah, the fact is, like, the Phillies, the 2 games they won were pretty much uncompetitive. So the Diamondbacks did not use anybody in game 5 who was meaningful. And that means that, Sewald and Ginkel and Thompson and Mantiply and Sal Frank, those are the 5 that they trust the most, I think, based on how this is going. I would expect, Thompson and Ginkel and Sewald to take 3 of the innings, and then Mantiply / Sal Frank to take that lefty pocket whenever it comes up in the order for the Phillies, with Marsh, Schwarber, Harper, 8-1-3. So they can kind of play around with that. But, I think the biggest thing is, like, they like their righties against the Phillies righties a lot. And that's the thing that scares me personally, because they can pitch around the lefties and then just go after the righties. If Turner or Bohm doesn't get a big hit tonight, I think the Phillies are in big, big trouble.
Brandon Pfaadt outs prop at 11.5 at BetMGM. Ranger Suarez 10.5. I know you've both mentioned walks. Bryce Harper over a half walk -105. Schwarber is juiced to -140. I'll go to DeBundo first, then Zerillo. What direction? Pitching, batters? Where would you like to go in the prop market?
Yeah, so I took some Brandon Pfaadt under 4.5 -145 at BetMGM just before we started recording. Sean and I were discussing this. Strikeouts, yes. I don't know how this number exists given the situation. Pfaadt was a strikeout per inning guy this year, and, like, no matter what you think of his first start his last start in the playoffs against the Phillies, as good as it was, we've seen him, pitch to contact against the Dodgers and still get outs and be effective. We've seen him struggle with command against Milwaukee in the playoffs. Like, you can't just look at one start for a guy and say, this is the guy he is. That was a ceiling level start for Pfaadt, even though, we're all fans of him. So at 4.5 strikeouts, as for a guy who averages a strikeout per inning, whose outs total is at, 11.5, like, he would need to throw to go over this number more often than not 5 innings. And so I don't really see how, if he's going to pitch around Schwarber, which I think is very possible, and he's going to pitch around Harper, especially with Schwarber being, like, the best strikeout opportunity in the lineup, how does he get to this number? Unless he's just absolutely dealing, and then I tip my cap to him. So I think this number's high. I think the way game 7s are managed, like you mentioned, Sean, guys like Miguel Castro and Frias are rested. So if he gets in trouble in the 4th inning, we're going to see them come in. So I think that Pfaadt under 4.5 is probably my favorite prop today. And that's one that, I just bet as a result. Also, you can bet it's 10-1 me to not survive the game. That's a novelty prop as my stress levels are rapidly rising.
Did you bring a glass of milk to the podcast this morning?
I did not. No milk today. It was a big subject of conversation, but I've not had breakfast yet. So I'm just.
Well, I can't recall because all these games now just mesh together in my brain. But when you had the glass of milk, did the Phillies win that day?
I believe they lost. I think it was Friday night, right?
It was Friday night. Yeah. The Kimbrel night. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Brandon Pfaadt, the under 4.5 strikeouts is juiced to -145. Zerillo, you're on Bryce Harper once again to walk.
Yeah, I've been on Harper to walk in every game of this series. And as Anthony mentioned, I think it's been very obvious with how the Diamondbacks have pitched him, how they're pitching Kyle Schwarber, looking to get around those guys and then attack the hitters who are less hot in the lineup, like Nick Castellanos, who is 0 for 16 with 8 Ks in his last 16 appearances, I believe. JT Realmuto getting an occasional hit, but not really doing much. Johan Rojas giving them absolutely nothing at the bottom of the lineup. So good approach by the Diamondbacks, not letting the best hitters beat you. With regards to other props, and I like that Harper walk prop up to about -140. They just continue to put him in 3-ball counts. And sometimes he's swinging at pitches outside of the zone on 3-2. Sometimes he's swinging at pitches down the middle, 3-0. And, getting out of situations where he's trying to be walked or they're trying to pitch around him, but we can't control that. We can just control the situations where we think he'll get 3-ball counts, and he's in 3-ball counts every night. So Harper to walk up to -140 as it's been all series. On the strikeout props for Pfaadt, I want to bring up where the lines are today, but for game 3, Brandon Pfaadt under 10.5 outs, closed -105. Under 3.5 strikeouts, closed -110. For today, you can bet under 10.5 outs for Pfaadt 11.5 outs for Pfaadt at -150. So his outs prop went up about 1 out and 35 cents, but his strikeout prop also went up from 3.5 to 4.5, and the under went from -110 to about -140, -150. So I do think, tacking an extra out onto Pfaadt's his outs recorded prop for today, I don't think that justifies another K and the same amount of juice being factored into the line. Basically, they moved it up a full out and factored in all that juice, but they also moved it up a full strikeout and factored in all the juice. So I think both lines moving up together by 1 with the same amount of juice is probably too much of a correlation. Like, it should be moving up. The strikeout prop should be moving up about 30, 35, 40% of the pricing that the outs prop is moving up. They shouldn't be both moving up together a full number and then 30 cents on top of that. So I do agree with Anthony. Where Pfaadt's outs recorded prop is at 11.5, a lot would have to go right for him to get 4.5 strikeouts. I know he was great in that game 3, 41% called strike plus whiff rate. As I said, I think he is their highest upside starter, but also they're going to be pitching around guys. He was very aggressive against Kyle Schwarber in game 3, by the way. Why I did not bet Schwarber over props for walks. They've been pitching around Schwarber. Pfaadt actually went right after him. I thought that was interesting. And it does make sense intuitively, especially the first at bat of the game. Why walk the leadoff hitter? Like, I'd rather fall behind 1-0 than put Schwarber on with nobody out and let the Phillies get a rally going. So, I think he'll continue to be aggressive with Schwarber, especially in the first at bat of the game. Never know who's going to be on when Schwarber comes up a second time, but Pfaadt under case, under 4.5. I think I'd bet that up to -150. I think that's fine. And then Ranger Suarez, I also wanted to mention, bit more difficult to get a feel for his pitching usage tonight. I was trying to think about when he might come out of the game earliest, and it's probably 11 hitters. I don't know if they're going to be that aggressive with him because, as Anthony said, there's like 4 relievers that they trust at this point. I don't know how deep you want to go into your bullpen, and Suarez has been pretty good in the playoffs. So maybe they're just going to let him roll for as long as he's pitching well and they're done with the scripted games thing for Ranger Suarez. He's proven that he's been very solid. So I'm less inclined to just bet Suarez unders, assuming they're going to play a scripted game. But if they do script it, it's probably going to be 11 hitters. He's probably coming out after he sees Corbin Carroll a second time. So 10 hitters, 11 hitters, whether Carroll's hitting first or second. That is the minimum that I think Suarez goes tonight, but it's also potentially the maximum too. I think, Anthony, do you have a better feel for how deep Suarez goes into this game? Is it going to be a batter by batter thing?
Yes, batter by batter.
Yeah.
The thing is that, if he's in trouble, he probably, like they will get him out, right? If he gives up multiple runs early, like, yeah, he's out. But like if a big spot comes up and he gets through the inning, I think they'll push him for another clean inning. That's the thing. It's like, you know, the reason that I think they have a little more faith is just how good the changeup was in game 3, which I talked about. His ability to get righties with the changeup is really important against this lineup because they have so many right-handed bats. One interesting angle, we haven't really talked about it, but Ketel Marte, should we start looking into his walk props, or the Phillies going to have to pitch around him because he has been lighting up the series? You can't platoon him. And there could be a situation where there's a lefty with Carroll on deck, and they're going to go after Carroll instead of Marte, given how they've hit this series. I'm not sure, but I think, maybe Marte walks is a good way to go about it. He's the only guy that's really consistently crushing the ball for Arizona.
He's 8 of 18 too against Suarez in his career.
Yeah.
And he's gotten a hit in every playoff game he's ever been in. I believe he has a 15-game playoff hitting streak.
Yep. And he hit the ball really well off Suarez in game 3. He was the only guy that really did anything.
Right.
He had that leadoff double in the 6th. The max, I think, for Suarez reasonably is 20 batters. We will look. I think if you want to play the Suarez strikeout prop, you almost want to play alts. Like, don't lay the juice on 2.5, but play like a 4.5. Because if he's really good, he goes and pitches like he did in game 3, he'll go way over. But if you're like teetering on 2 to 3 and it's like, oh, he's in the 3rd, he's kind of struggling, then like you didn't want the over 2.5 at minus 180 anyway. So I think that, the way to play Ranger is probably alts, because if he is really, really good again, then he can get these guys out. I mean, it's crazy to me that Fott and Suarez, and I know the Phillies strike out more than the Braves do, or than the Diamondbacks do, but it's crazy to me that the Suarez prop is 2.5 juiced over and the Fott prop is 4.5 juiced under, with them having about the same number of outs. So I think it's a little surprising to me, given how they've pitched this season. So if you like Suarez, I like alt overs. I like the Fott under. I think the market, should be around 3.5 for both guys.
Yeah, I think the Suarez props are really tough to bet today. I think it's pretty obvious that the Diamondbacks are going to be aggressive with their bullpen again, especially with what they did to Kelly yesterday. Like, not letting
beautiful.
him. That was so odd.
The under 15.5.
But you leave him in for Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper a 3rd time, which has been the problem all series. He gets through those guys with strikeouts, and then you pull him. I don't get it. I just don't get why you let him see them a 3rd time. What's that?
They had the plan. They had their 4 guys they knew they were going to use.
Yeah.
At that point, though, it's like it's already 4 to 1.
With Arizona didn't really make sense to me. I mean, Thompson's played matchups a little weird with the Diamondbacks hitters too throughout the series, like not bringing in lefties to face lefties and then bringing in lefties for the string of righties in the Diamondbacks lineup. You felt some moments where it's like, why is he playing the matchups as he is, right?
Yeah. Now there will be some hand wringing over game 4 if the Phillies do not win tonight. That is for sure. But it really comes down to the offense, and I think that's going to be the story if they go down quietly tonight, because this is the home voodoo. The Phillies at home, we're not supposed to lose games in our own park, so losing at home would be a real gut punch for Phillies backers and fans alike.
So how do the righties get right at the plate?
Stop chasing.
Stop chasing. Well, that's who they are, though, right?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of the Phillies, though, and that's why they're a very frustrating regular season team, right? Like, they go through these stretches where they can't hit. And they look awful at the plate, and then they get red hot for like 3 weeks, and then everybody's like, this is the greatest team of all time. And if you can sync up the hot run with the playoff run when they lock in, then you can have this kind of situation. But you see the warts and the flaws in the approach. The 2 guys who take their walks, Schwarber and Harper, are the 2 guys who are the 2 best hitters. So it has come to pass now with Castellanos, Turner, and Bohm, and even Stott striking out 30% in the playoffs, by the way. Best hit tool on the team and 2 strike hitter in baseball this year, 30% strikeout rate in the playoffs. So that just gets to the point of like the chase. It's been unbelievable. And the Diamondbacks are more disciplined. They don't have as much power though. Like, if you pull up the odds board for the home run odds for tonight, the first 5 players listed are all Phillies. So that kind of gets to the other point, which is just like, yeah, the Phillies are going to hit the ball out of the park more, but on a bat to bat basis, this Diamondbacks lineup is better at working counts, better at working at bats.
All solo shots.
Yeah. And then nobody's ever on base for the Phillies. So it's tough.
That Castellanos homer was, I feel like, the only one they've had that was a 2-run shot. Or was it Real Muto? But they had a 2-run shot
Yep.
And that's the only one they've had all series. The rest of them have been solo shots. So yeah, there's nobody ever on base because it's Harper or Schwarber hitting the home runs, and then nobody else does anything. I think they need to be really patient against Fall tonight. I do.
Yep,
I'm
I do
looking
too.
at his pitching log for game 3, and it's a mess. There's so many pitches that are outside of the strike zone, and not even close to the zone, like way inside, way low, way outside. He's either in the zone or completely wide of the zone. There's not much in the shadow zone. It's either in or out. And he has great stuff, and he gets guys to swing through it when it's in the zone. And I would imagine a lot of the stuff that is way out of the zone are just sweepers that are have incredible break that look like they're going to be strikes for quite a while. So it doesn't look as dramatic as the pitching chart actually shows based on where the ball's ending up. But I would be incredibly patient tonight. I'd make that kid throw strikes. And
that's the thing for me. It's that, do they reset here and lock in? And it's possible. And if they do, do you look at a FOD over 1.5, especially with how we expect him to pitch to Harper? That is something that I think is worth it. Plus 170 out there if you really want to get into it with the FOD walks and you lean into the fact that he can get a little erratic. And, this is a road start for him. He did make his last 2 starts against the Dodgers and the Phillies at home. His other road start, he really did struggle with command early. The Brewers, a much more patient lineup, walked a bunch and then hit a big homer on him. So, there are flaws. I mean, Brandon Pfaadt is very good. We all like him. We're speaking relatively here. He still is not, he's not exactly Randy Johnson. So, there's going to be the first inning is so important.
And hasn't pitched much in weather that's not climate controlled, 70 degrees, good weather. I mean, it's not like we're getting 50 degrees, 45 degrees here in Philly tonight, but it's still 10, 12 degrees, 14 degrees colder than he's used to pitching in. Maybe the grip's a little bit off. There's things that you cannot quantify as readily that do factor into home field advantage. And, you add up, right, the game 7 rookie on the road, 13th rookie, I believe, ever to start a game 7 for either ALCS, NLCS, or the World Series. So you add in the rookie factor, the pressure, home field advantage for Philly, the home run issue, all of that stuff definitely adds up at some point. But yeah, I think Pfaadt being on the road versus at home, it's a bit of a different game for him. And I think the grip on the ball, that may have some sort of an impact tonight. And yeah, that kind of leads me to wanting to bet these walk props too, if his command is just going to be, a hair off from where it was last game.
The D-backs did tally some stolen bases as we wondered as this series went on, would they get their running game? We mentioned this before yesterday's game 6 with the Diamondbacks. Speaking of doing what they do well, would they get their running game going? Zarello, how do you handicap? This is my last question. I think we're good to go, but what's your outlook of the running game and how it impacts tonight's game?
Well, they're not going to run a Ranger Suarez. Suarez has allowed, I think, 19 stolen base attempts for his entire career. So they're not going to run on him. And that's another reason Craig Kimbrell will not be in this game. If they get a walk against Kimbrell, it's a double. So you can't pitch Kimbrell against this team, regardless of even whether he was effective. It's the base running dynamics against him make every situation a nightmare. So it's something to watch out for, certainly. And I obviously, as a Phillies better, I don't love seeing the Diamondbacks run, but as a baseball fan and as somebody who wants teams to play to their optimal win condition, I'm glad that they ran last night. They put the Phillies down, right? And they got them in a situation where they were uncomfortable and they felt confident, okay, we don't necessarily need these runs, but we can put pressure on them to put this game away. And that's exactly what they did. And, you get the Phillies thinking about coming back, right? And just going out by out on the pitching side, but then you start running on them and giving them things to think about. And it opened the game up a little bit. So, yes, they're going to have to run on the right-handed relievers tonight. I haven't looked into the stolen base rates for, Hoffman and Dominguez and guys like that, but it's not going to be Suarez and it's not going to be in the early innings. So look for the Diamondbacks to get aggressive later in the game. I don't know if there's any books that allow you to bet live stolen base props. I know there's some books that let you bet live prop markets, but if you go bet live stolen base props and those numbers float up as the game, keeps going along, I'd consider poking something in the later innings or, once Suarez is out of the game, I think their chances of stealing will dramatically increase.
Okay. Bondo, what's your plan for the day? You're going to take a nap or drink heavily? Like, what's the plan? What are you doing?
No drinking for me. I will be watching Champions League
Oh,
soccer.
you could drink milk. I mean, I didn't say what you had to drink. I just
Right. Yeah, I will be on the couch quietly enjoying the game tonight. And by enjoying, I mean going through torture for 3 hours. This is the first. Did you know this, Brendan?
I heard
Phillies,
this. I know what you're going to say. I heard this and I couldn't believe it. I heard this last night. Go ahead.
So the Phillies have been around since 1883. They were established just at their reconstruction, which is wild. And they have never played in the history of their franchise a Game 7.
Yep.
140 years of Phillies baseball, and they have never played in a Game 7. So this is uncharted territory for the city and for the team, and we're very excited. If you were going to bet a steal prop, I mean, it's Bryce Harper. He's the most likely guy to be on first with 2 contact hitters behind him. The Phillies like to steal with 2 outs, 2 strikes. They like to steal with 2 strikes in general, try like a hit and run type thing. So, you can find as high as 7 plus 750 on him. He's the most likely value bet, just because I think the books are kind of not shading him down enough, given how likely he is to be standing on first base at multiple times in this game. So that's the key for me with steals. As far as my thing, we got Champions League from 3 to 5. I got some other writing I need to get done. I'm trying to keep my mind off baseball. I'm going to listen to calming music and try to, get through it. So it's exciting. It's exciting. And if you told me at the beginning of the year the Phillies were going to play a Game 7 in the NLCS at home, I would have signed up and laughed at you because I didn't think that would happen. So here we are.
That's fair. It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Now, if they win, will you go into town or
no, okay. Not tonight. No. We got business to take care of. 4 more if they win tonight.
Oh no, that was the Astros approach after winning the division. They didn't celebrate. The Rangers celebrated, so you got to celebrate.
And look how that worked out for them. No,
yeah, I mean
there will be parties on Broad Street tonight if they win. 100%. I just will not be partaking in said parties.
Okay. Once again, we will not have an episode tomorrow. And that's whether they lose or not. It's not because DeBundo's running away. We're just not having an episode. We're going to take the day off tomorrow. We'll come back Thursday for a World Series preview, Rangers, Phillies, or Diamondbacks. And then Friday will be a Game 1 best bets specific episode. Thanks for tuning in all year long, everybody. We have more coming on Thursday for Zerillo and DeBundo. Brendan Glasheen, thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast. We are presented by BetMGM. Don't forget, leave a 5-star rating and review for a chance at a 1-year free subscription to Action Pro. Enjoy Game 7, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.